Hey guys, enjoy these new 20 stories. We hope you enjoy them. Let us know your thoughts. And as always, most of you listening aren't subscribed, so please smash that subscribe button and hit that like button too. It's free and does so much for us. We're forever grateful. Now to the stories.
I didn't think much of Emily and my dad getting along. Honestly, I thought it was kind of sweet at first. Like my exes always got awkward around him and Emily. She'd talk to him for hours. They'd be in the kitchen after dinner sipping coffee, laughing about some old movie I'd never seen. It felt normal, maybe even lucky. I mean, how many people have girlfriends who actually enjoy hanging out with their boyfriend's dad? We'd been dating 2.5 years. We met in this dumb poetry elective in college. I never wanted to take it, but I needed the credit. She had this notebook covered in stickers and was always late. I sat behind her the whole semester and finally asked her out after she read this super dramatic piece about love and loneliness. It was all kind of weird, kind of cool, kind of her. After we graduated, we moved into this tiny place near the beach. The rent was stupid high, but we made it work. I worked nights at a bar and did freelance graphic design stuff during the day. She worked at a bookstore and did photography gigs when she could get them. Our schedules barely lined up, but it was enough. We still had our little rituals. Sunday pancakes, grocery store dance-offs, that weird thing where we'd argue about what animals we'd be if we were wild. Dumb stuff, but it was ours. Then came the weird stuff. It started with her going over to my parents' house without telling me. She'd say it was for dinner or to borrow tools for her camera tripod or whatever, and I didn't think twice. Sometimes she'd bring back leftovers or weird stories about my dad's old high school friends. She started texting him a lot too. I saw his name pop up on her screen once, and I joked, "What are you two besties now?" She just laughed. Said he had better taste in music than I did. I laughed too. No big deal. But then she started staying late at his place. She'd go over to help him set up his new record player or go over photos from his college reunion, and I'd fall asleep alone on the couch waiting for her. I brought it up once, just casually, and she told me I was being dramatic, that I was jealous she got along with my dad and that I should chill. She made it a thing like I was being insecure. I dropped it. Then one night I got home from work early. The bar had a gas leak or something, and we closed. I thought I'd surprise her. I walked into our apartment, and it felt weirdly empty. Her camera bag was gone, which was normal, but her overnight bag was missing too. I called her. No answer. So I texted her, thinking maybe she was out shooting something last minute. Hours passed. Nothing. I tried calling again. Straight to voicemail. I went to bed annoyed but told myself she probably just crashed at her friend Mandy's or something. Next morning, still no word. Around noon, my mom called. Her voice was weird, hesitant. She said she needed to tell me something but didn't know how. I sat there on the edge of the bed while she told me Emily was at their house. Not just visiting. Staying. She had her stuff there. My mom said she walked in on them kissing in the kitchen. I remember just staring at the floor, like maybe if I focused hard enough on the grain of the wood, it would all make sense. I couldn't even speak. My own girlfriend. With my dad. I went over there that night. I didn't knock. I walked in, and there they were. Sitting at the dining table, plates out, candle lit, like some twisted dinner party. Emily stood up when she saw me. My dad didn't. He just looked at me and said, "You should have called." That's it. That's what he said. Like I was the one being rude. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just looked at her. She wouldn't meet my eyes. I walked out, got in my car, drove to the beach and sat there for hours until the sun came up. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there with this knot in my chest that felt like it was never going to go away. A few days later, I moved out, packed my stuff while Emily was out. She texted me once, saying she didn't want things to end like this. I never replied. What was I supposed to say? Cool that you left me for my father. Hope dinner's good. It's been over a year. They're still together. My mom divorced him. She's in therapy now. I don't talk to either of them. Sometimes people ask me if I ever saw it coming. I tell them no. I tell them I thought I was building a life with someone who loved me. Not someone who was just waiting to upgrade to an older model. That's the thing. Everyone always talks about trust like it's this solid thing you can rebuild. But when it's broken like this, when it's crushed in your hands by the people who were supposed to protect you, it doesn't just crack. It disintegrates. It's gone. Forever. Anyway, I live across the state now. I don't date much. I got a dog. His name's Franklin. He's cool. Doesn't steal girlfriends. Doesn't lie. Sleeps like a log and drools on my pillow. That's more than enough for now. There's this photo I used to keep on my phone. It was from this random day at the lake, one of those weirdly warm spring afternoons where everything just sort of clicks. We'd been messing around near the water, eating gas station sandwiches, tossing rocks into the lake like kids. In the picture, I'm holding this ridiculous sandwich with both hands like it's some kind of trophy, and Jake's next to me, soaked from when I pushed him in, grinning like he didn't have a care in the world. That photo used to mean everything to me. I had it as my lock screen for months. Now I can't even look at it without feeling sick. Jake and I met through a mutual friend during lockdown. We were both stuck in that weird limbo of isolation where even the smallest human connection felt like gold. He messaged me first, said something dumb about my profile picture and how it looked like I was holding a squirrel. It was actually a small dog. We talked for hours that night, the next night too. It just kept going. Before long, we were having sleepovers that turned into long weekends that turned into him moving in without either of us really saying it out loud. He was easy to fall into a rhythm with. He knew when to make me laugh, when to leave me alone, how to make breakfast without burning the place down. We didn't fight much. He wasn't the type to yell or throw things. He was calm, collected, always figuring things out. That's what he'd say when he didn't want to answer something. Let me figure it out. It felt like real stability, something I didn't grow up with. He came from this big, loud family who went camping and made short charts for fun. Mine was more survival mode, but Jake didn't seem fazed by any of that. He said he liked how independent I was, said he admired it. That I missed my period. I wasn't expecting it. We were careful. Not super strict, but careful enough. I took 2 tests in the bathroom at 2 a.m. When both had those faint lines, I just sat on the floor for a while. The bathroom light flickered above me, and I remember wondering when we'd last changed the bulb. When I told Jake, he didn't freak out. Didn't get mad. He just sat there, quiet, then nodded and said we handle it together. He made tea. Rubbed my back. Told me he wasn't ready to be a dad, and that it wasn't the right time. We talked about the future, how we still had student loans, how we were barely affording rent, how it would change everything. He said it like we were deciding whether to adopt a pet, not whether to have a kid. I went through with it. It was fast, clinical, and cold. The staff was kind, but I still felt like a ghost afterward. Jake picked me up, made some jokes to fill the silence, and tucked me in with extra blankets. I don't remember much about that week except for how heavy my body felt, like I was moving through thick water. Exactly 7 days later, he told me he had a work retreat out of town, just for the weekend. Something about brainstorming for a new project with his team. I helped him pack, folded his hoodie, handed in his headphones. Gave him a hug before he left and said I loved him. He said it back. I watched him drive away. I had a weird feeling, but I didn't know why. I brushed it off. Told myself I was being paranoid because of everything going on. I spent that weekend watching garbage TV, ordering delivery, and trying not to think about anything real. Then Sunday night came, and everything cracked open. I was scrolling on my phone, just zoning out, when I saw a picture pop up on my Explore page. I didn't follow her, but someone I knew did, and that's how it landed in front of me. It was a picture of Jake, standing in the middle of the woods with some girl in a flowy dress. They were holding hands, looking all dreamy, golden sunlight behind them like something out of a commercial. The caption said, "He asked and I said yes." Her name was tagged, so was the location. I remember staring at the screen, trying to convince myself I was misunderstanding. Maybe it was an old photo. Maybe a prank. Maybe a look-alike. But it was Jake, my Jake. The same guy who left for a work retreat 2 days earlier. Same smile. Same watch I'd given him for his birthday. Smiling like he'd just won the lottery. I didn't cry. I went still. Completely still. I stared at that picture like it was some kind of crime scene, waiting for the moment it would start making sense. I called him. No answer. I called again. Straight to voicemail. I texted, "What the hell is this?" No reply. He came back Monday morning like nothing happened. Walked in with a smoothie, dropped his bag by the door, kissed me on the cheek like he hadn't just proposed to someone else. I didn't say a word. I opened the photo on my phone and held it up to him. He didn't even act surprised. Just sighed and said, "I was gonna tell you." like it was a minor inconvenience, like he forgot to take the trash out. He said it had been complicated, that he was trying to figure it out, that you didn't want to hurt me, that you didn't plan for it to go this far. I asked him why he let me go through that whole thing, the appointment, the recovery, the heartbreak, if he was just going to leave. And he looked me dead in the eye and said, it just wasn't the right time. He packed up a few hours later, didn't say goodbye, just took what he needed and left. I threw the rest of his stuff in a trash bag and left it outside. He never came back for it. I didn't tell a lot of people. What was I supposed to say? That the guy I thought I was building a life with left me for someone else a week after I ended a pregnancy we both created. That he proposed to her before even breaking up with me. That I saw on Instagram before I heard it from him. A month later, he emailed me. One of those fake deep messages full of hope you're doing okay, and I'll always care about you, and you meant a lot to me. I didn't respond. I still haven't opened it all the way. Sometimes I think about deleting it. Sometimes I think about forwarding it to his fiancée just for the hell of it. But I don't. I moved to a different place, smaller but quiet. I don't date. I don't even try. I just go to work, take walks, read dumb articles online, try not to think about what could have been. Some days are fine. Some aren't. I'm not over it. I'm just tired of being in it. The photo from the lake, still buried in an old album on my phone. I don't look at it. But I don't delete it either. I guess part of me still doesn't know what to do with it. It's weird how someone can be your whole world 1 minute and just a name you don't say out loud the next. It started with a dog. That's the part people usually find the most ridiculous, but that's where the unraveling began. See, Lauren never even liked him at first. Said he barked too much, shed too much, followed her around like a shadow. I remember one time she called him that clingy mutt, which he thought I wasn't listening. But after we broke up, suddenly he was her emotional support animal. Suddenly she was posting about how he got her through a hard chapter, like he was her soulmate in fur form. The same dog she once tried to feed gluten-free waffles because she thought it'd help his anxiety. We'd been together 4 years, met through mutual friends, became friends ourselves, then kind of fell into dating because it felt easier than not. We were that couple who people thought would get married eventually just because we'd been around each other long enough. And for a while, I thought so too. We had the same taste in movies, we both hated camping, and we could spend entire Sundays doing absolutely nothing and still have fun. I honestly believed that was enough. She moved into my place after a year. It was small, nothing fancy, but it had this balcony that caught just the right amount of sun in the morning. We made it ours. Painted a wall yellow just because it felt cheerful. Bought plants we kept forgetting to water. The dog came into the picture 2 years in. I'd wanted one for ages, grew up with them. She wasn't into it, but said she'd tolerate it. We got a scruffy rescue mutt with sad eyes and a tail that thumped like a drum when he was happy. I named him Milo. Lauren never bonded with him the way I did. She'd roll her eyes when he jumped on the couch or got excited when I came home. She'd complain about how he followed her to the bathroom or how his fur ended up in her lip balm somehow. She'd never say it directly, but I could tell she didn't get it. The whole unconditional love thing dogs are famous for. But she tolerated it. That was the word she used. Tolerated. The actual breakup wasn't explosive. No screaming. No throwing things. It was one of those slow, silent deaths. Conversations got shorter. We stopped touching each other just to touch. She stayed late at work more. I spent more time with Milo on walks, letting him sniff every blade of grass like it mattered. One night she just said, "I don't think this is working anymore." And I nodded. I didn't argue. It was already over by then. We agreed to split stuff down the middle. Furniture, bills, the plants, though most of them were already half dead. I assumed Milo was staying with me. I was the one who fed him, walked him, took him to the vet. She didn't even know where his leash was kept half the time. But then she said she wanted to take him. Said it was for her mental health. That she'd grown attached. That he calmed her down when she felt anxious. I laughed at first. Thought she was joking. She wasn't. I told her absolutely not. That Milo was mine, that he wouldn't be happy with her. I listed everything. I took him to training. I paid for his food. I was the one he followed room to room like a loyal little satellite. She said I was being possessive. That he was a thing to be owned, he was a being, and he should be with the person who needed him more. It turned into a full-on argument. She started bringing up things that had nothing to do with the dog. Said I was emotionally distant. Said I'd never let her make decisions. Said she felt like a guest in her own home. All because I wouldn't hand over Milo. I told her that was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever heard, and she stormed out. Came back 2 days later with a lawyer. That's when things got nasty. She filed for temporary custody of the dog through small claims. I didn't even know that was a thing. She said she could prove she was the primary caregiver. Said she had photos, receipts for food she bought, once, maybe twice. Texts where I said he loved her more than me as a joke. She twisted everything. Made it sound like I was some kind of controlling psycho who treated her like a roommate and Milo like a trophy. She also used my old therapy notes against me. Stuff I told her in confidence. About my depression, my anxiety, how there were days I barely left bed except to walk Milo. She said that made me unstable. Said the dog would be safer with her. It wasn't just humiliating. It was violating. I trusted her with the ugliest parts of me, and she weaponized them. We went to mediation. The mediator was polite but checked out. You could tell she thought the whole thing was a waste of time. Lauren came in with folders, printouts, highlighted texts. I came in with Milo's adoption papers and a leash in my hand. Milo wasn't there, but I kept holding the leash anyway, like it meant something. I thought I had it in the bag. I thought logic would win, but Lauren started crying midway through. Said she'd been struggling since the breakup, that the dog was the only thing keeping her grounded. Said she was scared to be alone, and that taking Milo would be like losing her only lifeline. I sat there, stunned, while the mediator nodded and scribbled things on a notepad. At the end, she suggested we share custody. Share custody of a dog, like he was a child in a custody battle. Lauren looked at me with this smug little smile, like she'd won, like she'd always known she'd win. I walked out without saying anything, drove straight to a park, sat in my car, and stared at the leash in my hands. Milo was at my friend's house for the day. I hadn't wanted him near any of it. In the end, I didn't go through with the shared custody. I gave him to her, packed up his stuff, his toys, his bed, his worn-out tennis ball, and handed it all off like I was donating it to charity. She said thank you like she was being polite, like we were just acquaintances. I didn't say anything back. That was almost a year ago. I still think about him every day. I wonder if he misses me, if he sleeps by the door like he used to, if he gets enough walks, if she feeds him the dry kibble he hates or remembers to rinse his water bowl every few days. Sometimes I check her social media just to see if she posts him. She does, always with some sappy caption about how he saved her. He looks fine, happy even, and I hate that. I hate that he's okay without me. People don't get it. They say, just get another dog. But it's not like that. Milo wasn't a placeholder. He was the one good thing I had during the worst parts of my life. The only one who didn't care if I couldn't get out of bed or answer my phone or make conversation. He was just there. Always. Navi's not, and she gets to pretend he was hers all along. He gets to rewrite the story while I sit here with nothing but an old leash in the back of a drawer and a silence in the apartment that feels louder than anything. I used to joke that if my life were a movie, Mike would be the guy in the first 30 minutes you think is the love interest. And then plot twist, he's actually the villain. The thing is, I didn't realize I was living in the part after the twist. You never really do until someone hands you the script in hindsight and says, yeah, you should have seen that coming. Mike and I met at a New Year's Eve party my roommate dragged me to. He was wearing this awful sweater with tiny beer mugs on it, and still somehow made it look like he knew what he was doing. We clicked fast, too fast. Within a couple weeks, he was making breakfast in my kitchen like he'd always been there. 3 months later, we were basically living together. He wasn't flashy. He didn't send flowers or plan elaborate dates. But he remembered the little things. The weird way I liked my popcorn. That I always slept with one sock on. That I hated Thursdays because of a college class I still had nightmares about. Stuff no one else ever noticed. And when you've been through enough hollow relationships, that kind of attention feels like love. It felt solid. Our apartment was small and nothing special, but we made it feel like home. Movie nights with string lights, toothbrushes next to each other, inside jokes on sticky notes on the fridge. It all felt real, even when we started arguing more than we used to. I chalked it up to stress. He was in between jobs for a while, trying to start a freelance thing. I was working overtime and trying to be supportive. When he snapped, I let go. When I cried, he held me. We kept holding on even when our fingers started slipping. I was the one who ended it. It wasn't dramatic. I just told him I couldn't do it anymore. I felt like I was walking on eggshells in my own place. Like I was managing his moods more than my own. I needed space. I needed air. He didn't yell. Didn't throw things. He just stood there, blinking, and said, okay, like we were deciding what to order for dinner. The next few days were awkward. He didn't move out right away. Said he needed time to figure out where to go. I didn't push it. I told myself I could handle a few more days. We'd always said we'd stay civil if it ever came to this. Keep it mature, respectful, like adults. But things got weird fast. He started staying out all night, not telling me where he was going. Then he'd come back early in the morning and pretend nothing happened. One night, I found him in the kitchen at 4 a.m. just sitting there staring at the wall. I asked if he was okay. He said he couldn't sleep and walked past me like I was a stranger. Then came the texts, paragraphs, whole essays about how I'd ruined everything, how I'd let him on, how I made him believe we had a future. They weren't angry so much as desperate, like he wanted to pull me back with guilt. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I didn't have it in me. A few days after that, I came home from work and found the apartment completely dark. I turned on the lights and saw him on the couch, still as a statue. There were pill bottles on the table. His phone next to a half-written note. My stomach dropped so fast I couldn't breathe. I called an ambulance. I waited outside, pacing and shaking so hard I could barely hold my phone. The paramedics came. He was conscious barely. They took him to the hospital. I followed in my car, heart in my throat the whole drive. At the emergency room, they wouldn't let me see him at first. Said they had to assess him. I just sat there, frozen. The nurse asked if I was family. I said yes. I didn't know what else to say. When they finally let me see him, he looked fine. Tired. Pale, but lucid. He smiled when he saw me. Said, I didn't think you'd come. And I just stood there, not knowing whether to hug him or slap him. He said it wasn't serious. Said he didn't mean it. That it was just a bad night. That he needed help, not judgment. I told him I'd help however I could. That we'd get him through it. Even though we weren't together anymore, I couldn't just walk away from someone who needed help. I meant it. I really meant it. He got discharged a day later. He came back to the apartment. Said he wanted to start therapy. Said he was going to make changes. I believed him. Maybe not completely, but enough to give him time to figure things out. Then I found the receipts. They were stuffed in a drawer he never used. Hotel bookings. Dinners for two. From before the overdose, during the nights he said he was out driving around, thinking. I confronted him. He said it was a distraction. That it meant nothing. That he was just scared of being alone. That's my new. None of it was real. The overdose wasn't a cry for help. It was a leash. A way to make sure I stayed close. To make sure I didn't move on. He knew I wouldn't leave someone who was hurting. So he made himself hurt. I told him he had to go. I gave him a week. He didn't argue. Just nodded, hacked slowly like he was trying to make each moment stretch. The night before he left, he sat on the floor and played a song we used to love. I didn't join him. I just went to bed. After he left, I changed the locks. Blocked his number. Deleted every photo, every playlist, every note he ever left me. I kept the sweater, though. The one from the New Year's party. I don't know why. Maybe to remind myself that sometimes the villain wears beer mugs and smells like laundry detergent. He sent me one more message from a new number. Said he missed me. Said he was sorry. Said he hoped I was okay. I didn't respond. I still haven't. Now I live in a new place. I don't keep spare keys on the counter anymore. I don't share locations. I check drawers. I ask questions. And I listen to my gut when something feels off. People talk about heartbreak like it's all crying and pints of ice cream. But sometimes it's sitting in a hospital waiting room wondering if you'll ever trust yourself again. Sometimes it's realizing the person you thought you'd build a life with was just building a trap. I still hear the song he played sometimes. It comes on at random in stores or in the background of a video. And every time it does, I look around like maybe someone else will understand what it used to mean. But they never do. It's just noise to them. Just another melody. But to me, it's the sound of someone almost convincing me that love was a leash I should never try to slip out of. I came back to grab the last box. That's literally all I was doing. Just grabbing a box of books I left behind in the apartment. I wasn't even supposed to be there more than 5 minutes. But I forgot people do the worst stuff when they think no one's looking. I should have called first. I should have knocked harder. But instead, I just used my key. I opened the door, and it was weirdly quiet, like a hotel room after checkout. Our couch was still there, but the throw pillows were gone. My coffee mug had disappeared from the drying rack. I stepped over a pair of shoes I didn't recognize. I figured maybe Mike had friends over, which was already weird because he didn't really have the kind of friends who just came by. He was more of a closed-off type, or at least he used to be. He used to act like letting anyone in was a big deal. But clearly some doors weren't as closed as I thought. I walked down the hall, and that's when I heard something. A voice, then another, low, hushed. I paused because something felt off, like hearing your name in a stranger's mouth. And then I heard it again, laughing, then silence. Then that sound you never want to hear coming from a bedroom that isn't yours anymore. I don't even know why I opened the door. Curiosity? Stupidity? Whatever the reason, I wish I hadn't, because there they were, Mike and my mom. Not hugging, not having a serious talk, not doing something you could misinterpret or explain away. They were tangled up in my old sheets I'd just folded and put away a month before. It took them a second to notice me. Mike's face dropped first. My mom didn't look surprised, though. She just looked annoyed, like I'd walked in during a commercial break and ruined the episode. No one said anything. No one jumped up or scrambled for clothes. They just stared. I backed out of the room and walked straight out of the apartment, the box I came to get, still on the floor by the kitchen. I left the door open behind me. I didn't care if a raccoon got in and took over the lease. It wouldn't be the worst thing to happen in there. I didn't even cry right away. I just sat in my car with the engine running, staring at my steering wheel like it had answers. I kept thinking about all the little signs. The way he'd suddenly stopped trash-talking my mom's Facebook posts. How she'd stopped asking about him, like they were both trying to erase each other while I wasn't paying attention. I thought it was progress. Turns out it was just guilt dressed up as smility. A few hours later, Mike texted, not to apologize, not to explain. Just, you left your box. I didn't respond. I didn't trust myself not to throw my phone into traffic, but he kept texting. Said he didn't mean for it to happen. That it just happened. Like that explained anything. Like that made it okay. I didn't talk to my mom for a month. She didn't call. She didn't text. She didn't even check if I was alive. When I finally cracked and called her, she answered like she'd been waiting. She said they weren't together. Said it was a mistake. Said she was lonely. Like that somehow made it less disgusting. Like I was supposed to hear that and go, oh, okay, my bad for walking on that. She kept saying I had no right to judge her. That I left Mike. That I moved out. That I didn't want him anymore. Like he was a leftover sandwich she was entitled to eat because I'd thrown it away. She actually said, you're being dramatic. Like I caught her borrowing my sweater without asking, not hooking up with my ex-boyfriend in my old bed. I asked her if she loved him. She didn't answer. That told me enough. People always say betrayal comes from those closest to you, but they don't tell you how confusing it is when those people don't even seem sorry. How they look you in the face and act like you're the one being unreasonable for reacting like a normal person. Mike sent me one more text a few weeks later. Said he felt abandoned when I left the apartment, that he didn't know how to cope. That my mom was just there, and it wasn't planned. I wanted to laugh, or scream, or something, but I just blocked his number instead. I started therapy not long after. Not because of them specifically, but because I couldn't untangle how I felt. I was furious, obviously, but also embarrassed, humiliated. I felt like a walking punchline. The girl whose ex slept with her mom. People don't bounce back from that. They get Twitter threads written about them. They get turned into bad sitcom plots. I didn't want to be a joke, but I felt like one every time I remembered the look on their faces. Eventually, I moved cities. Got a job I actually liked. Made friends who didn't know either of them. It felt like I'd pressed reset on my life, but every now and then I'll hear someone say, my mom's visiting this weekend. And I'll tense up before I remember that some moms don't sleep with their kids' exes. Some moms bake cookies and knit scarves and ask how your day was. I didn't get one of those. The thing that still gets me is how easy it was for them. How neither of them seemed to lose sleep over it. Mike kept his job, kept his car, probably kept my mom too. She still goes to the same church. Still posts inspirational quotes online like she didn't blow up her own family for a 5-minute comfort fix. People ask if I ever forgave them. I usually just shrug. Forgiveness sounds noble, but sometimes it's just a way to pretend something didn't hurt as much as it did. I don't hate them. I don't wish them harm, but I don't forget, and I don't pretend. You think the worst kind of heartbreak is romantic, but honestly, the kind that comes from someone who raised you, that's the one that leaves a scar you don't even know how to explain. That's the one you carry, not like a wound, more like a burn, quiet, deep, permanent. We had this spreadsheet. I know that sounds weird, but we were both kind of nerdy with money and Anna loved organizing things. It was a shared Google sheet called House Fund, and every Friday we'd both throw in a little chunk of our paychecks. She made it color-coded and everything. Blue for rent, green for groceries, yellow for the dream. That's what we called the house we were gonna buy. Somewhere small but ours. Something with a backyard and a kitchen island. She always wanted a kitchen island. We'd been dating 3 years, living together for 2. We weren't perfect, but we worked. I handled the boring adult stuff, insurance, bills, whatever. She kept things fun. She was the kind of person who left notes in the fridge under yogurt that said, "Eat before I turn." Dumb jokes that made the day better. I liked coming home to her. We talked about the future a lot. Not in a heavy, marriage is next kind of way, but in a let's make a life together kind of way. Our lease was up in 6 months, and we started going to open houses just for fun. She'd point out things like bad light or weird vibes, and I'd pretend to care even though I had no idea what weird vibes in a basement even meant. It felt like a real team, like we were getting closer to something big. So I guess you could say I wasn't prepared when everything cracked open. It started small. A weird Venmo notification. She paid someone named Tyler $200 with a hammer emoji. I asked her about it, half joking, and she brushed it off. Said it was a guy from her office helping her fix a window at her mom's place. Fair enough. I didn't push it. She was always doing things for other people. That was her whole thing. But it kept happening. Little chunks of money disappearing. Odd charges on our joint card that weren't for groceries or rent or anything I recognized. One day I saw a $700 withdrawal labeled consulting. She said it was a design thing for a freelance client. Again, I didn't press. I trusted her. But that feeling, the one where something's off, started following me around. A few weeks later, I'd opened the spreadsheet. I don't even remember why. Just habit. I wanted to see how much we had saved. But when I clicked it, half the numbers were gone. The green section, the house fund, was almost empty. There was a new tab I hadn't seen before labeled transfers. I clicked it and saw rows of notes. Names I didn't know. Wire transfers. Payments labeled support and settlement and fee. It didn't take long to figure it out. Anna had been slowly draining our savings, not for furniture or a surprise trip or even some random addiction like gambling. She was paying for her ex-husband's legal bills, thousands, quietly, bit by bit, over months. While we were out looking at houses, she was secretly funding court cases that had nothing to do with us, nothing to do with me. I remember just sitting there for a while, rereading the spreadsheet like it would change. Like maybe I misunderstood. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like. When she came home, I didn't even get up. I asked her straight up what the money was for. She stood there, coat still on, looking at the screen, and didn't say a word for a long time. Then she sighed, sat down, and said, "I was going to tell you. I just needed to help him first." I didn't even know where to start. This was the same guy she'd once called the biggest mistake of her life. The one she said ruined her credit, cheated on her with her best friend, and left her with nothing but a pile of shared debt. And now she was bailing him out, with our house money. She said he was in trouble, that he didn't have anyone else, that she couldn't let him sink. She said, "You don't understand what it's like to feel responsible for someone even when you hate them." And maybe I didn't, but I knew what betrayal felt like. I knew what it was like to build something with someone only to find out they were taking bricks from the bottom while you were still adding to the top. I felt like a fool, like I'd been investing in something that never existed. She tried to make it better, said we could start over, said she'd put the money back, that she'd fix it, but I couldn't even look at her. The weird part is I wasn't even mad in the way I thought I'd be. It was more like numb. Like I was watching a rerun of someone else's breakup. I packed my stuff 2 days later. She offered to leave instead, but I couldn't stomach staying in that apartment another second. Every corner felt fake. The coffee mugs, the couch, even the dumb magnet letters on the fridge that spelled home-ish. I moved in with a friend for a while. Told people we broke up because of different priorities, which was technically true. Her priority was protecting a man who had already broken her. Mine was protecting the life I thought we were building. Funny how those things don't line up. A few months after that, she emailed me. Said she was sorry. Said she finally realized what she did was wrong. That the ex didn't even thank her in the end. That he ghosted her the second the case was over. She asked if we could talk. I didn't reply. What do you even say to someone who chose their past over your future? Now I live in a tiny studio with a mini fridge and no closet doors. No spreadsheet, no dream house, but I pay for everything myself. Every dumb light bulb, every overpriced roll of toilet paper, every crappy toaster that burns one side of the bread. It's all mine. And that feels better than any backyard or kitchen island ever could. Sometimes I see homes for sale online and I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't checked the spreadsheet that day. If we kept going, buying plants and arguing about paint colors, all while the foundation was already gone. But then I close the tab and I go make toast. One burnt slice at a time. When Brian said he couldn't live without me, I really believed him. We'd been together for 2 years and he was the kind of guy who was always making grand gestures. We had that kind of relationship where every day was an adventure, or at least it felt like one. We were the couple that posted pictures on social media holding hands while walking through forests or laughing over pancakes on lazy Sundays. To outsiders, we were perfect. To me, he was my best friend, my everything. And I thought he felt the same way. But I should know when he started talking about his dark times, about how everything would be better if I was just a little more understanding. I thought it was a phase, something he worked through. His depression, his anger, his past, he told me everything. I wanted to be there for him. I wanted to make him happy because he made me happy, or at least he used to. The first sign that something was wrong came a few months ago. Brian started pulling away. He'd be distant, staring off into space, not answering my texts right away, even when I knew he saw them. When we were together, he'd still hold my hand and kiss my forehead like everything was fine. But there was this weird feeling in the air, like something was missing, but neither of us knew how to fill the gap. I convinced myself it was just stress from work. He'd had a lot going on. He'd been trying to land this promotion for months, and I knew he was under a lot of pressure. I kept reassuring myself that he just needed some space, that everything would be fine once he got a handle on it. Then one night, after weeks of barely speaking, I came home early from work. I had dinner ready, nothing fancy, just pasta with pesto and some garlic bread. We had planned to watch a movie afterward. The moment I walked in the door, I could hear him talking in the bedroom. I thought maybe he was on the phone with a friend or maybe even his therapist, but then I heard his voice crack. That wasn't a voice he used with anyone else. I didn't think. I just walked down the hallway toward the bedroom, half expecting to see him struggling with his emotions, maybe even crying. I would have comforted him, told him it was okay. That's what I wanted to do so badly. But instead, I walked into the room and froze. Brian was sitting on the edge of the bed, phone in his hand, talking to someone. I couldn't hear the other voice, but I didn't need to. I knew who it was. It was clear as day. I recognized the number on his screen. It was one I'd seen on his phone a few times before, Tyler. I had never met Tyler. I didn't even know if Tyler was real. Every time I asked about him, Ryan would change the subject, saying it was just an old friend from college or a guy he worked with. But that wasn't what stopped me. What stopped me was the words Brian said next. I couldn't hear every word, but I heard enough. Enough to know that he wasn't talking to a friend. He was talking to his ex. The one who had left him months before we started dating. The one he always swore didn't matter to him anymore. The one who had broken his heart, the one he said he'd never get over. And there he was comforting her, whispering things that were meant for me, promises of how everything would be fine, that he'd be there for her, that he couldn't live without her. And then came the part I'll never forget. He said, "I'll be with you soon. I just need to handle some things first, and then it'll be like we never even left each other." I felt like the floor had just dropped out from under me. My brain couldn't catch up with what I was hearing. This wasn't just a conversation. This was a plan. They were planning to get back together, and I had been the fool in the middle of it, the placeholder until he could sort out his feelings for her. I stood there, frozen. For what felt like hours, I just stared at him, trying to make sense of it. He didn't even see me at first. He was so lost in the conversation. It wasn't until he looked up and saw my face that everything changed. The panic in his eyes was instant, like he'd just been caught doing something he didn't expect. He put the phone down and tried to get up, but I stopped him. I didn't even know what to say. I didn't know how to react. But that didn't stop him from talking. He started with an apology. Said he didn't mean for me to find out. Said it wasn't what it sounded like, that I misunderstood. But he didn't even try to explain anything. Not really. He didn't try to tell me why he was talking to her behind my back, why he was planning to leave me for someone else. He just sat there, looking at me with those wide eyes, waiting for me to calm down, waiting for me to forgive him. Like that was how it worked. Like I was supposed to understand. But I couldn't understand. I didn't want to. I didn't want to hear it because the truth was worse than anything he could have told me. The truth was that while I had been making dinner and planning a future, he had been planning to leave me. And I was just a person he was killing time with until the real love of his life came back. He didn't say it outright, but it was there. In every word, every pause, every shallow excuse. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just said, "Get out." That's all I could manage. I told him to leave. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want him to apologize or tell me anything else. I just wanted him gone. He didn't fight me on it. He didn't even argue. He just stood there, put his head down, and walked out the door. And just like that, he was gone. Not in a dramatic, heart-wrenching scene, but in the quietest, most hollow way possible. It was like I'd been replaced, and it didn't even take a second for him to decide. I don't even think he was sorry. I think he just wanted out, and I was the one who had to carry the weight of it. I didn't even get a real goodbye. It's been a few months since that night. I don't know what he's doing, honestly. I don't care. I don't want to know. The only thing I know for sure is that I'm done. I don't care about the lies, the apologies, or the excuses. What hurts the most isn't that he left me. It's that I was never even a choice to him. I was just someone who was convenient until his real love showed up again. And that's the hardest thing to swallow. Knowing you weren't enough to keep someone, not because of something you did, but because they were never really with you in the first place. The first time Jessica made me feel uneasy, I brushed it off. We had been together for about a year, and like most relationships, it started out with this perfect mix of excitement and peace. She was funny, smart, and we just clicked. People would even say we were one of those couples that seemed too perfect to be real. But as with most things that seemed too good to be true, there was always a small part of me that couldn't ignore the feeling that maybe, just maybe, there was something off. It was the small things at first, like how she would suddenly laugh at something I said or do something out of context when we were alone. I thought she was just quirky, but I couldn't help noticing that sometimes she'd leave me hanging on conversations, almost like she was avoiding being too vulnerable with me. I mean, we were getting serious, right? Why wouldn't she open up about everything? She didn't have to tell me all of her secrets, but the occasional odd moment where she seemed to withdraw made me wonder. Then came the phone. She'd been a little protective of her phone in the beginning, and again, I brushed it off. Who didn't want a little privacy? But then it started getting weird. She'd leave the room to take calls, and I'd hear hushed conversations, always with the door closed. When she'd come back in, her face would be flushed, like she'd been holding something back. I asked her who it was once, but she just shrugged and changed the subject, saying it was nothing important. That was the first time I started to feel like something was wrong, but I didn't want to be the overthinking, paranoid boyfriend. So I kept quiet. I tried not to let my suspicions get in the way of what I thought was a solid relationship. Then there was the night I found out. It was just an ordinary Tuesday. I came home from work a little earlier than usual, hoping to surprise her with dinner. We had planned to watch a movie later, and I figured I could do something nice. But when I walked into the apartment, I saw her phone line face up on the kitchen counter, a text message flashing on the screen. I hesitated for a second. It was one of those moments where I knew I should mind my business, but my curiosity got the better of me. The text was from an unknown number. It was a simple message. "I miss you. Can't wait to see you again." I felt my heart sink. I shouldn't have looked, I knew that. But in that moment, everything felt like it was collapsing in on itself. I looked at the number, but there was no name attached. No clue who it was. It wasn't from any of her friends or family. It wasn't anything that felt familiar to me. I took a deep breath and, against my better judgment, clicked the message. It wasn't just the one message. There were a dozen more, each one getting more intense, more intimate. The kind of messages you don't send to someone you're just friends with. The kind of messages you send to someone you're sleeping with. Each one felt like a punch to my stomach. I scrolled through the conversation, hoping for some kind of explanation, but it just got worse. There were promises of getting together soon, plans to meet up for lunch, and a lot of heart emojis that just made me feel like I was drowning in confusion. I should have put the phone down. I should have walked away and waited for her to come home and explain herself. But I didn't. I kept reading. I couldn't stop myself. I had to know the truth. And what I found shattered everything. There, at the very top of the thread, was a name that made my blood run cold. David. David. The name sent a jolt through my body. David was someone she'd told me about early on. An old friend, someone she had dated briefly years ago. She always talked about him like he was nothing, just a fleeting chapter in her life. She would joke about how he was always in the friend zone, and that there was nothing more to it. But reading those messages, I realized how wrong I had been to believe that. I heard the door click open just as I was staring at the screen, paralyzed. I quickly put the phone down and pretended to be busy with something else, anything else. But she walked into the kitchen, smiling, the smile that I used to love. She didn't notice the tension in the air. She didn't see the way I was stiff, my eyes flickering between her and the counter. "Hey, what's up?" she asked, as if everything was normal. "Who's David?" I asked, my voice surprisingly calm. She froze for a second. It was so brief, but I caught it. Her eyes darted to the phone on the counter, then back to me. She let out a quick, nervous laugh. "Oh, he's no one," she said, brushing it off, but the way she said it wasn't convincing. Not at all. I could see it now, the way she avoided my eyes. The way her words didn't match the reality I had just uncovered. "He's just an old friend," she repeated, but I could tell she was trying too hard to sell it. I couldn't keep pretending anymore. I pushed harder. "So why is he sending you these kinds of messages?" The smile faded from her face. She bit her lip, and for the first time since I'd known her, she looked nervous. Really nervous. I watched her eyes search for the right words, but she didn't find them. Instead, she just stood there, silent, her breath shallow. "Jessica," I said, my voice now shaking a little. "What's going on?" She sighed, and I saw her shoulders slump. "Look, I didn't want you to find out like this," she started. "David and I have been seeing each other. I didn't mean for it to happen, but it did." I felt like the room was spinning. My heart raced, my thoughts scattered in a million directions. Seeing each other. The one thing I didn't see coming. She had been with him the whole time, all while I thought we were building something real. She'd been keeping me in the dark, playing both of us like fools. "Why didn't you just tell me?" I asked, my voice quieter now. "Why keep it a secret?" "I don't know," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't want to hurt you. I thought I could just end it. But I couldn't." And that's when it hit me. She wasn't just talking about ending things with David. She was talking about ending us. She had already checked out our relationship while I was still here, still believing in it, still working on the future we talked about. She had made up her mind, and it wasn't even on the list. I don't know how long we sat there, not talking, just letting the weight of everything settle around us. The reality of what she'd done, what I hadn't seen, the trust that had been broken, the promises she had made to me while she was making the same promises to someone else. I didn't want to hear her excuses. I didn't want to hear how sorry she was. I didn't want to hear anything. I just stood up, grabbed my jacket, and walked out. I didn't look back. I never thought it would end like this. I never thought I'd find out the way I did, with a text message and a stack of lies. But here I am, sitting alone in my car, wondering how many other lies there were that I never even saw coming. And that's the hardest part of all, knowing you were just one piece of someone's puzzle while they were busy piecing together their real life behind your back. I had always loved animals, and when Lauren and I decided to get a dog together, I couldn't have been more excited. We both agreed that adopting a rescue dog was the way to go, and after a few weeks of searching, we finally found the perfect one. A scruffy terrier mix who seemed to need love more than anything else. We named him Max. He was our first big step as a couple, and I thought that would be the foundation of something solid. Little did I know that Max's presence would eventually be the thing that tore everything apart. The first year having Max was filled with joy. We'd take him on long walks, play fetch in the park, and spend cozy evenings at home with him curled up at our feet. It felt like we were building this little family together, just the three of us. But somewhere along the way, things started to change. Lauren began to act different, more distant, more easily irritated. She wasn't as interested in spending time with Max, and I found myself doing most of the dog care. At first, I figured it was just stress from work or personal stuff she didn't want to talk about. But the more I did for Max, the more I felt like I was the only one invested in our little family. I tried talking to her about it a couple of times, but every conversation ended the same, with her brushing it off and telling me I was overreacting. "I'm just tired," she'd say. "We're both just tired. It's no big deal." But I knew it was. It started with Max. First, it was the walks. I was the one doing them. Then it was feeding him. Then it was taking him to the vet for his regular checkups. The routine tasks we'd agreed to share were now completely on my shoulders, and it was starting to wear me down. I kept wondering why she was pulling away. Was it me? Was it the dog? Was it the relationship? But I pushed the thoughts aside because I loved her, and I wanted to believe that things would get better. Things came to a head when we decided to take a weekend trip up to the cabin we'd rented for our anniversary. It had been planned for months, and I was really looking forward to getting away from everything, the stress, the tension, the sense that something wasn't quite right between us. We dropped Max off at the pet sitter's house, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like we could reconnect without distractions. But that weekend didn't turn out how I'd imagined it would. It was as though Lauren had become a completely different person. She seemed cold, distant, and the conversations we used to have were now replaced with awkward silences. I tried to spark conversations about our future, about what we wanted next, but everything I said was met with disinterest or vague answers. It felt like I was talking to a stranger. I didn't want to ruin the weekend, so I kept quiet and tried to go with the flow. But by the time we returned home, the tension was unbearable. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I asked her if something was wrong, if we were okay. At first, she tried to brush me off, saying she was just stressed, but after a little prodding, she finally admitted something that stopped me in my tracks. "I think I want to end things," she said, her voice soft but certain. "I don't feel like we're on the same page anymore." My heart dropped. I couldn't believe it. I thought we were doing okay. I thought we had a future. But standing there in the living room with Max's empty bed in the corner, everything felt like it was falling apart. She told me that she had been feeling this way for months, but she didn't want to hurt me. She said it wasn't about me, but that she just didn't feel the same anymore. I couldn't understand. How could she feel like this when just a few months ago we were talking about getting a bigger place for our growing family? We had made plans for the future, for our life together. What had changed? I tried to talk it through with her, but the more she talked, the less I understood. It was like she'd already made up her mind. It wasn't about love or lack of it. It was just something that had slowly faded over time. I didn't know how to process it. The person I had built my life around was telling me she didn't want that life anymore. But it didn't stop there. As we navigated this painful breakup, Lauren's actions began to get even more confusing. One day, I came home early from work to find her sitting at the kitchen table, her face pale. She was holding a stack of papers in front of her, and when I asked her what was going on, she didn't answer at first. When she finally spoke, it was like a punch to the gut. "I filed for custody of Max," she said quietly. My heart stopped. Custody? Of a dog? I couldn't believe it. Max wasn't a possession. He was part of our family. How could she be so cold about this? But the more she explained, the more I understood. It wasn't about the dog, it wasn't about anything that had to do with Max. It was about control. She told me that since I had done most of the work caring for Max, she was going to fight for full custody. She said it was only fair because she hadn't been as involved in his day-to-day care. But I saw through it. I realized she wasn't trying to do what was best for Max. She was using him as a pawn in our breakup. She knew how much I loved him, and she knew that if she could take him away from me, it would hurt more than anything else. I was furious. I couldn't believe she would do something like this. It was low. It was petty. But it was also manipulative. I had been the one to take him to the vet, to the park, to the groomers. I had been the one to train him and spend every moment with him. Max was my family, and she was using him to get back at me, to hurt me in a way that felt deliberate. The next few weeks were a blur of phone calls with lawyers and long discussions with people who told me there was nothing I could do. In the state we lived in, pets were considered property, and there was very little legal recourse when it came to custody of animals. It was a painful reality to accept, but I did. I fought, of course. I wanted Max back, but no matter what I did, Lauren had the upper hand. She had already filed the papers, and she was determined to get what she wanted. In the end, the court ruled in her favor. I could visit Max, but he would live with her. The judge said it was based on the fact that I had been the one to move out of the apartment, and that Lauren's home was more stable for him. I lost. I lost everything. I lost the person I thought I would spend my life with, and I lost the dog who had been my companion, my comfort, my joy. Lauren got everything, and she didn't even care. She got Max because she knew that would hurt me the most. And that's how it ended. I moved on, but not without scars. The whole situation taught me a hard lesson about trust, about manipulation, and about how some people will go to great lengths to get what they want, even if it means destroying something that was once good. Max and I will always have the memories, but that's all we have now. The rest was taken from me. I had always thought Daniel and I were on the same page when it came to our future. We had been together for 3 years, and although things weren't perfect, I genuinely believed we were building something solid. We talked about moving in together, maybe even getting married down the line, starting a family one day. It was the kind of life I dreamed of, settling down with someone I loved and trusted. But little did I know, Daniel had already made a decision that would change everything for me. It all started when Daniel started talking about his ex, Lisa. They'd been together for years before we met, but they had broken up amicably. He told me they had remained friends, and I was okay with that. I didn't see any reason why he couldn't be friends with someone from his past, as long as it didn't affect our relationship. But there was something I couldn't shake about the way he talked about her. He'd get this weird look in his eyes whenever her name came up. It was like there was something more between them than just friendship. One night, I was over at his place, sitting on the couch and scrolling through my phone, when he got a text from Lisa. I wasn't snooping, it was just that I had seen her name pop up on his screen. It wasn't the first time, but there was something different this time. I glanced at him, and he quickly put his phone face down on the table. That moment stuck with me, though I couldn't quite figure out why. It felt off, but I ignored it and brushed it aside. I trusted him, or at least I thought I did. Weeks passed, and we continued on with our lives. But one evening, out of nowhere, Daniel came to me with a strange, almost hesitant expression on his face. He told me that Lisa had been trying to get pregnant for a while, but hadn't been able to. I remember how he said it. It sounded like he was telling me a sad story, one that needed sympathy, not a confession. He said she'd asked him if he considered donating sperm. I froze, unsure of how to process what he was telling me. I know this sounds crazy, he said, but it's something we talked about. She really wants to be a mother, and I just thought maybe I could help. It's not like it's going to change anything between us. You're my future, not her. It didn't sound crazy to me. It sounded ridiculous. I sat there trying to wrap my head around it. He'd agreed to do this without talking to me first. Without asking me how I felt about it, I was furious, but I didn't know how to respond. Instead, I tried to hold it together, giving him the benefit of the doubt, assuming it was just some bizarre favor he had done for a friend. I didn't want to make a scene, but something about it didn't sit right with me. It wasn't until a few months later that I found out the truth. I was at his apartment again, and I was digging through his drawer for some receipts when I found a letter from a fertility clinic. At first, I thought it was just some paperwork from his past, but when I opened it, I saw the truth staring back at me. He had donated sperm to Lisa. The clinic had confirmed the donation and included a follow-up appointment for him to come back in. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I stood there, the letter trembling in my hand, trying to make sense of it. Why had he lied to me? Why hadn't he told me the whole truth? I didn't know what to think anymore. The trust I had in him shattered in an instant. I confronted him that evening, my voice shaking as I demanded answers. Daniel's response was a mix of confusion and defensiveness. "It's not what you think," he said, as if that was supposed to explain everything. I didn't want to hurt you, but I knew how you'd react. I thought I was helping her, and it wasn't going to affect us. I didn't think it was a big deal. A big deal? I asked, my voice rising. You're playing God with someone's life, Daniel. You don't think that's a big deal? He didn't know how to respond. His face went pale, and for the first time I saw guilt in his eyes, but it wasn't enough. I couldn't just let it go. I had been lied to, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized how much he had kept from me. "So what now?" I asked, unable to keep the bitterness from creeping into my voice. "You're a father now. What am I supposed to do with that? Were you even planning on telling me, or were you just going to let me find out when it was too late?" "I didn't know how to tell you," he muttered, staring at the ground. "Well, guess what, Daniel?" I snapped. "You didn't tell me. I found out on my own, and now I have to deal with this. I'm sitting here wondering what the hell we were even building together if you were out there making life-changing decisions behind my back." He couldn't look me in the eye. I could see the shame written all over his face, but I wasn't sure it was enough to make up for what he had done. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. This wasn't just some small mistake. This was a massive betrayal. Not only had he lied to me about something that affected our future, but he had put me in the position of playing second fiddle to his ex. Over the next few days, I tried to make sense of everything. I couldn't just forget it. How could I? This wasn't just a small blip on the radar. It was a major violation of trust. Daniel had promised me a future together, but instead, he had given a piece of our life away to someone else. He had chosen to be a father to Lisa's child, while I was left to pick up the pieces of a relationship that felt like it had never even existed. The worst part was that I still loved him. I wanted to forgive him, to believe that he made a mistake and that we could move past it. But every time I looked at him, all I could see was the image of him donating sperm, making a decision that had everything to do with his past and nothing to do with me. Eventually, I realized that I couldn't keep trying to make it work. I couldn't be in a relationship where I was constantly left in the dark, where I had to wonder if there were more secrets I didn't know about. So I walked away. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't quick, but it was necessary. I needed to rebuild my life on my own terms, not as someone's second choice. Daniel went on to play the role of the father in Lisa's life. He acted like nothing had changed, but for me, everything had. He had taken something from me that I couldn't get back, and now, every time I thought about the future we could have had, all I could feel was betrayal. It was around our 2-year anniversary when I first started noticing things were off. Ashley had always been a little secretive with me, but I convinced myself it was nothing. We lived a busy life, balancing work, friends, and the occasional night out. But then little things began to add up. First, it was her odd behavior whenever religion came up. I'd never known her to be particularly religious, and when she started making vague references to attending services on this side, I didn't think much of it. I figured maybe she just found a new interest, something that made her feel better about herself, and I supported that. But as time went on, her secretive nature grew. She started spending more time on her phone, constantly checking it, and texting people I didn't recognize. When I asked who she was talking to, she'd either get defensive or change the subject altogether. The changes were subtle at first, but they were there, lurking just beneath the surface of what had once been a perfectly happy relationship. And in the pit of my stomach, I started to feel something dark forming. One evening after a long day at work, I came home to find Ashley sitting at the kitchen table, her phone in hand. She looked up when I walked in, her face almost too calm. Something in her demeanor instantly made me uneasy. "Hey," she said, putting the phone down and offering me a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "How was your day?" I smiled back, but it felt forced. "Good, but what's going on with you? You've been acting strange lately." She paused, looking at me with wide eyes, almost like she was caught off guard. I didn't know it then, but that was a moment I should have known something wasn't right. "Strange? I don't know what you mean." "Don't lie, Ashley," I said, the frustration creeping into my voice. "You've been distant. You've been talking to people I don't know. You're hiding something from me, and I want to know what it is." She sighed and leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms over her chest. "I'm just going through something, okay? It's personal." I stared at her, trying to read her expression. She wasn't giving me anything. The silence stretched between us, and I finally just let it go, knowing I'd probably never get a straight answer from her. It wasn't until a couple of weeks later that I found out what was really going on. I had been invited to a small gathering of friends at one of our mutual friends' houses. Ashley wasn't feeling well, so she had stayed behind. I didn't think much of it at the time, but when I walked into the living room, I overheard a conversation between two people. People I didn't even know, talking about Ashley. The one sentence that hit me like a slap across the face was something like, "Yeah, she got married last month. I think it was in Dubai or something." My heart stopped. Married? What the hell were they talking about, Ashley? Married? To who? I didn't even wait to hear the rest of the conversation. I bolted out of the room, rushed to my phone, and called her. It rang a couple of times before she picked up. "Hello." "Ashley, what the hell is going on?" My voice was shaking. "I just overheard something that I need you to explain. Are you married?" There was silence on the other end of the line, followed by a heavy sigh. Then she said, "I didn't want to tell you like this." "Like this?" I repeated, feeling the anger bubble up. "Like what? How were you planning to tell me, and why the hell didn't you?" She paused again, and I could hear her breathe heavily, like she was trying to calm herself. "I'm sorry. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't want to hurt me. I had been with this woman for years, thinking we were in a solid relationship. And now I was hearing about her getting married behind my back, as though it was some afterthought in her life. I felt betrayed. I felt sick to my stomach. "You're married?" I asked again, this time more quietly, the shock settling into my bones. "To who?" She hesitated before answering, her voice barely above a whisper. "I married someone else, someone I met overseas. I've been seeing him for months now. I could feel my world crashing down around me." "What the hell, Ashley? While we were still together? How could you do that to me?" She didn't immediately respond. I could hear her shifting around, probably pacing, before she spoke again. "It's complicated, all right. It was never supposed to go this far. But she cut herself off. I just didn't want to lose everything here." I didn't know what to say. My brain was spinning, trying to make sense of the absurdity of what she was telling me. "So what, you've been with someone else while you've been with me? And you kept this from me?" "I didn't want to tell you because I knew you wouldn't understand. I didn't want to hurt you." I laughed bitterly, shaking my head as I stood in the middle of the living room. "You didn't want to hurt me. How much worse could you have hurt me? You've been lying to me this whole time." I didn't mean for it to happen this way. I thought I could keep it under control." "Keep it under control?" I repeated. "You thought you could keep a secret marriage under control?" She stayed silent, and I knew in that moment that there was no going back. I couldn't be with someone who would lie to me like this, someone who would deceive me so completely and without remorse. She had kept me around for the sole purpose of financial security, my paycheck, my stability, while living an entirely different life behind my back. "You should have told me," I said finally, my voice steady now, but full of hurt. "You should have been honest with me from the start, but you weren't." "I'm sorry," she said weakly. "I never meant to hurt you." "Well, you did," I replied, my voice hardening. "And now I'm done." I ended the call without another word, staring at the phone in my hand, my mind still trying to process the whole situation. I had given everything to this woman, my trust, my love, my support. And in return, I got a betrayal that shattered everything I thought I knew about our relationship. It's funny, though. You never expect the person you love to be the one who pulls the rug out from under you. And when they do, it's like the floor vanishes, and you're left just falling into the void. There's no soft landing, no cushion. Just the raw reality of the truth hitting you all at once. And in the end, all I could do was walk away from someone who had never truly been honest with me. I met Ashley at a party. It was a kind of get-together where no one really knew each other, but we all ended up talking anyway, just because we were stuck in a small apartment with too much alcohol. I didn't think much of it at first. She had this soft, quiet way about her, not shy, but reserved. She spoke like she was always processing something in her head before saying it out loud. I liked that about her. We started hanging out more after that. At first, it was just the usual stuff, grabbing coffee, talking about random things, getting to know each other. I remember thinking she had this calm, peaceful energy about her, and it was one of those things that made you feel comfortable without even trying. Over time, we got closer. I started looking forward to our hangouts. She was smart, funny in her own subtle way, and she seemed to get me in a way no one else did. She would always bring up how she loved studying new things, how there were so many philosophies and cultures she was interested in. I thought it was cute. It wasn't like other people who just parroted what they read online. Ashley actually seemed to care. Eventually, we became a couple. It happened gradually, but when I think about it, I can't pinpoint a specific moment where I just knew it was official. One day we were talking about plans for the weekend, and the next she kissed me, and that was that. It felt natural, comfortable. There were no big declarations. It was simple. But something started feeling off after a while. She would be distant sometimes, especially when we talked about the future. Whenever I brought up big plans like moving in together or maybe even getting married someday, she changed the subject. It wasn't a red flag at first. I figured she was just focused on her career or whatever. She was always busy with work or study. So I told myself that's why she wasn't really interested in talking about our future. Maybe she was just focused on herself for a while. Then came the little things. She started becoming a lot more private about her personal life. She was always on her phone, texting people I didn't know or talking to people I never met. I asked her about it once, just out of curiosity, and she said she was getting involved in some new community group, meeting new people who had the same religious interests as her. I didn't think much of it, honestly. She had always been open-minded about different faiths, so it didn't seem strange at the time. But then one day it hit me. She'd been acting a bit distant, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. It was late when I stumbled upon her journal in the living room. She'd left it on the table, and I almost didn't look. But curiosity got the better of me. I picked it up. I started flipping through the pages, just reading little bits and pieces of what she'd written. And that's when I saw it. She'd been secretly converting to a religion. I'm not talking about casually exploring it or just reading a few books. No, she was serious about it. She had written down every detail, plans, rituals, the works. It was like she was preparing for something huge, and she hadn't told me a word about it. I couldn't believe it. We'd been together for 2 years by that point, and she had never mentioned any of this to me. There were no signs, no conversations about it. I mean, I would have understood if she was going through something, but the secrecy of it, that was the part that threw me off. I had to confront her. There was no way I could let this go. The next day, I asked her about it. I wasn't angry, but I needed answers. I needed to understand why she hadn't told me, why she kept something so important hidden for so long. Her response. She was vague, evasive. She told me it was personal, that I wouldn't understand, that I needed to respect her privacy. When I asked if it had anything to do with a man she met through the community, she went quiet. She didn't deny it, but she didn't answer either. That's when I knew. It hit me like a ton of bricks. Ashley had secretly converted to this new religion, and while doing so, she had gotten involved with someone else. Someone who probably had similar beliefs to hers. Someone who was now her partner in a completely different way, spiritually, emotionally, in a way that didn't involve me at all. But here's where it gets worse. The truth slowly unfolded as I pieced things together. She wasn't just exploring a new faith. She had gone so far as to marry a man in some religious ceremony overseas. She had done it without me knowing, without ever mentioning it, while we were still together. The whole time, I had been part of this quiet, one-sided relationship where I thought we were working toward a future. And here I was holding everything together, thinking I was just going through a phase. But no, Ashley had moved on without telling me. She had already made this huge commitment behind my back. And what did I get? I got to be the fool. The one left in the dark, paying for her food, taking care of her, helping her with her studies, all while she was living a double life. And even worse, I still had no idea that she was keeping me around just to pay her bills, help her out when it was convenient for her. I wasn't even the main character in her life anymore. I'm not sure when the full reality hit me. Maybe it was when I saw the ring on her finger, the one she tried to hide when we were out with friends, or when I caught her texting this man, the one she had met in her new religion. It wasn't until the moment I realized I had been a prop in her life that it all made sense. When I finally confronted her about it, she broke down crying. But it wasn't the kind of crying you'd expect from someone who was genuinely sorry. It was the kind of crying that felt rehearsed. She told me she didn't want to hurt me, that she had been planning to tell me eventually, that everything had just gotten out of hand. But it was too late by then. I saw through the act. She'd been stringing me along for months, probably longer. She'd built this whole fantasy where she had me as her safety net while she explored something entirely different behind my back. I left. I couldn't stay. Not after everything I had found out. I didn't need the excuse of betrayal. The fact that she had kept me around for her convenience, all while playing out a completely different life with someone else, was enough for me to walk away. And now, whenever I think about Ashley, I don't think of the sweet, quiet girl who I once thought had my back. I think about the one who used me, who made me a fool, all while living her own life behind my back. I can't forget that, and I don't think I ever will. It started with a rumor, just a dumb rumor. I was standing in line at a cafe, half awake, waiting for my coffee when a friend of a friend tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, is it true about Vanessa and the trial?" I blinked at him like he was speaking another language. What trial? What was he talking about? He looked uncomfortable and changed the subject, but my brain wouldn't let it go. Vanessa and I had broken up about 6 weeks earlier, and yeah, it had been messy, but I thought we had quietly moved on. Turns out, not even close. I didn't find out what was really going on until later that night when I got a DM from someone I barely knew. It was a screenshot. A transcript from a court hearing. Her divorce. Apparently, she was trying to keep custody of her kids and had used me, my actual existence, as part of her argument. She told the court that I had manipulated her, that I had coerced her into cheating on her husband by playing on her confusion and distorting her understanding of her identity. That's how she worded it. Distorting her understanding of her identity. I sat there on my bed for what felt like hours just staring at the screen. We had been together for almost a year, not secretly, not behind closed doors. Everyone knew. We went out to restaurants, parties, family events. She told her friends about me and introduced me to her coworkers. She told me she had never felt more herself than when she was with me. She talked about moving in together. We looked at places. We shared passwords. And now she was telling a judge that I manipulated her. I remember my hands were shaking. I couldn't stop reading the same line over and over. The respondent acted under emotional influence from a partner who encouraged infidelity during a vulnerable period. It was like I'd been turned into a villain in someone else's story. A fake version of me now existed in official records, in front of a judge, probably in documents her lawyer submitted. It felt disgusting. I didn't even know she was married at first. She'd said she was separated, that they were living apart, that it was done. It wasn't until months into the relationship that she admitted the divorce paperwork hadn't gone through yet. She made it seem like a technical thing, like something stuck in legal limbo. I was already in love with her by then, and I told myself it didn't matter. She said she was emotionally done with him, and I believed her. She cried in my arms more than once about how trapped she'd felt in that marriage, how miserable she'd been, how she'd spent so many years pretending. So when she told me she was ready to start over, to be open about who she really was, I felt honored to be that person she trusted. I never pressured her. If anything, I kept pulling back because I was worried I was too much for her. She'd get overwhelmed. She'd pull away, then come back a few days later and act like everything was fine. I thought she was just figuring herself out. I didn't realize she was building a narrative she could weaponize later. After reading that transcript, I spent the next few days in a fog. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't focus at work. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped. I started questioning everything. Had any of it been real? Was she planning this the whole time? Did she ever actually love me, or was I just a convenient excuse? The worst part was knowing that she had painted me as some kind of predator when I had done everything I could to make her feel safe. I didn't reach out to her. I wanted to believe me. I wanted to scream at her, to make her explain how she could do that to me. But I knew it wouldn't change anything. The damage was already done. She'd filed that statement. She told those lies under oath. And even if she regretted it, even if she cried while doing it, it didn't matter. She had thrown me under the bus to win her case, and there was no taking that back. It didn't take long for the whispers to start. People who had once called us a beautiful couple now gave me weird looks. Mutual friends stopped inviting me to things. Someone even unfollowed me on every platform the day after her hearing. I knew exactly what was going on. She was spinning her story to everyone, not just the court. I'd become the scapegoat in her rebranding. She couldn't just admit she'd fallen out of love with her husband or that she had cheated. That made her the bad guy. But if I was a manipulator, the one who led her astray, confused her, pressured her, that made her the victim. That made her brave for escaping me. I couldn't believe how fast the narrative shifted. People don't ask for the truth. They just pick the version that's easier to believe. And in her story, I was the one who took advantage. I was the homewrecker. I was the reason her life went off track. I should have seen it coming. There were signs, little things she said that didn't sit right. Once, she told me that she felt like people only liked her when she was playing a role. She said she knew how to be exactly what people wanted, and that scared her. I think back to that now, and I wonder if that was the only real moment we ever had. Maybe she was telling me the truth in that one sentence. Maybe she didn't even know who she was without pretending. It's been months now, and I'm still untangling myself from all of it. The worst part isn't the court stuff or the rumors or even the friendships that got weird. It's the fact that some I loved chose to protect themselves by destroying the version of me that existed in their life. She could have taken responsibility. She could have said, I made a mistake. But instead she said, he made me do it. And now I'm stuck being that guy. The guy in the court transcript. The invisible villain. I don't hate her. I wish I did. It would be easier. But instead, I just feel hollow, like I lost something I'll never get back. Not her, not the relationship. I lost the ability to trust that someone wouldn't rewrite history just to make their own life look cleaner. And I know I'm going to carry that with me for a long time. It happened so slowly that I didn't even realize what he was doing until everything fell apart. Ethan was never loud about his anger. He wasn't the type to yell or throw things. He didn't fight to your face, he waited. Sat on things, let them rot. Then he'd strike in ways that didn't leave bruises, just silence and mess and questions you couldn't answer without sounding paranoid. At first, I thought I was overreacting. That maybe I'd imagined things. But looking back now, I see it clear as daylight. I broke up with him, and he decided to burn my life down piece by piece. We'd been together for almost 2 years. I was in a stable job, finally getting noticed at work, and Ethan had just gotten out of rehab about 6 months earlier. It hadn't been easy, but I stayed with him through all of it, late-night check-ins, picking him up after meetings, dealing with his withdrawal moods. I wasn't perfect, but I was steady. I stuck around because I believed in who he could be, not just who he was when he was hurting. I thought that kind of loyalty mattered. I thought it would mean something. But after he got clean, something changed. He started getting bitter. Not about the addiction, but about me. It was like he resented me for seeing him at his worst. Like every time I asked if he was okay or reminded him about a meeting, it wasn't support, it was control. I thought we were on the same team, but it turns out he saw me as the warden and himself as the prisoner. And when I finally told him I didn't want to do this anymore, he didn't cry, he didn't beg. He just nodded and said, okay. And that was it. I remember thinking, wow, that was easier than I expected. Had no idea what was coming. A few days after we broke up, I noticed something weird. I wasn't getting emails from my boss anymore. At first, I thought maybe I'd been accidentally removed from a chain or something, but then I tried to send an email from my work account and couldn't log in. I thought it was a glitch. I called IT, and they told me my access had been revoked because of an ongoing investigation. My stomach dropped. I called my boss from my personal phone and got straight to the point. He sounded awkward, almost guilty. He said something had come up. That HR was looking into a few flagged emails tied to my account. Emails I had no memory of writing. And that was when it hit me. Ethan. He knew my passwords. I trusted him with them during a rough patch when I'd forgotten my phone and needed to send something quick for work. I never changed them. I thought, who would do something like that? I didn't want to believe you would go that far, but deep down I already knew. I begged it to give me access even for 5 minutes, just so I could see what had been sent. They refused, said it was under review. I didn't even know what I was being accused of. I sat at my kitchen table for hours that day, staring at my laptop, replaying every interaction we had since the breakup. I kept asking myself, why would he do this? Why would he want to destroy me after everything? A week later, I was called into HR. They showed me the emails. Drafts and sent messages written from my account to other coworkers, full of unprofessional language, passive-aggressive digs, even one where I supposedly mocked a client. There were emails where I was trash-talking my team, calling people names I would never use, and the timestamps lined up perfectly. Messages sent at 3 a.m., others on weekends when I definitely hadn't opened my laptop. They asked me if I'd written them. I said no. They asked who might have had access. I told them, and just like that, my personal life was dragged into the middle of a corporate investigation. I felt humiliated, like I had to prove I wasn't crazy. I gave them Ethan's name, explained the situation. Even showed them old texts where he'd mentioned knowing things about my jaw. But there was no way to trace anything definitively back to him. No cameras, no fingerprints. Just digital footprints that could have been mine or his or anyone's. HR said they'd take it under consideration, but in the meantime, I was on unpaid leave. Just like that, everything I had built started slipping away. My reputation, my career, my income. I was staying on a friend's couch trying to figure out what the hell I was going to do, while Ethan was posting filtered selfies and inspirational quotes on his story like he hadn't just lit a match and dropped down my life. It's weird how quickly people believe the worst version of you. Colleagues I'd worked with for years suddenly stopped replying to my messages. Friends who used to invite me to dinner started ghosting me. No one said anything to my face, but the silence said everything. I wasn't just dealing with job loss. I was watching my whole social circle slowly push me out like I was toxic. I never got a confession. No dramatic text or voice message. Nothing. He just disappeared from my life as if we'd never happened. I'd see people still liking his posts, commenting things like, "You're so strong and proud of you." And I wanted to scream. Strong? Proud. They had no idea what he'd done. No clue that the same guy who preached about healing and forgiveness was quietly wrecking me because I stopped being useful to him. Eventually, HR decided not to terminate me officially, but they didn't invite me back either. They said it was best for everyone if I moved on. I didn't even get a severance. Just a gentle nudge out the door. I didn't fight it. I didn't have the energy. So now I'm rebuilding. New job, new passwords, new circle of people who don't know anything about what happened. I don't tell a full story often because it sounds fake, like some Lifetime plot where the ex ruins your life with one login. But it's real. I lived it. The worst part? I think he enjoyed it, not in an evil mastermind way, but in the quiet satisfaction of knowing he could still pull the strings after I walked away. At you, without raising his voice, he could cause damage I'd be cleaning up for months. And he did. He had the last word, not with a fight or a speech, just with silence and a couple of keystrokes. I didn't think I'd end up playing second fiddle to a dog, but here we are, or rather, here I was, watching Matt pack his things while promising, in the most casual way, that his relationship with his ex-wife was strictly about the dog. That sentence alone should have been a warning. Not the content, but the delivery, like he'd rehearsed it, like he'd said it before. When I met Matt, he was charming in that warm, easy kind of way. He listened when you talked. He laughed at your jokes. He remembered the little things, your favorite snack, the name of your cousin who broke their arm once in third grade. It felt easy with him, like we clicked into place without having to force it. And when he told me about his divorce, he made it sound like the kind where both people realized they'd just grown apart. No drama, no lingering feelings, just shared memories, a shared dog, and a shared understanding that they weren't meant to be. At first, I respected it. I thought it was cool that they co-parented the dog even after splitting up. It made him seem thoughtful, emotionally mature. He'd tell me stories about how he and his ex-wife took turns keeping the dog during the week, splitting vet bills, updating each other when the dog got sick. I even met the dog a few times. Sweet old thing. Didn't seem to care whose house he was in, as long as there was food and someone to rub his ears. Things between Matt and me started to get serious around the 1-year mark. We talked about getting a place together, started browsing listings half seriously, sending each other TikToks about furniture we'd never actually buy. It felt like momentum, like we were building something. But at the same time, there were these little cracks, like the fact that he always insisted on going to drop off the dog in person, instead of just meeting halfway or letting her come to our place. Or how he'd get weirdly defensive if I asked about her. "It's just the dog," he'd say. It's not a big deal. But it was a big deal. Because the visit started getting longer. At first, it was a quick handoff in a parking lot. Then it became coffee. Then dinner. Then she needed help fixing her sink. Then she invited him to just crash on the couch when it got too late. And every time I asked, he'd brush it off with a smile like I was being overly suspicious. Like I was the one making things weird. I started feeling like a third wheel in my own relationship. One weekend, I suggested we take a little trip. Just the two of us. Something low-key. Maybe a cabin up north. Some hiking, board games, no signal. He hesitated. Said that weekend was his turn with the dog. I offered to bring the dog with us. He said the dog didn't like car rides. I offered to take a different weekend. He said his schedule was tight. Eventually, I stopped offering. Because no matter what I suggested, there was always a reason it couldn't happen. A furry, four-legged reason. I didn't push too hard. I didn't want to be that person. But I started watching him more closely. His habits, his tone. And one night, after he'd fallen asleep on the couch, I noticed his phone buzzing. Over and over. Same name. I didn't open anything. I didn't need to. The preview messages were enough. Thanks for today. It felt like old times. You looked good in that hoodie. Forgot how much I missed that. My heart sank. I confronted him the next day. He didn't deny it. He didn't even look shocked. He just sighed, like he'd been waiting for the conversation to happen. He told me he'd moved back in with her, just temporarily. He said, because the dog had surgery and needed someone around all day. He said it wasn't about her, that he was sleeping on the guest bed, that it wasn't what it looked like, but he didn't move out. Not the next week, not the next month. It turned into this limbo where we were technically still together, but I was always alone. I stopped telling people I had a boyfriend because it didn't feel true anymore. I stopped making plans for the future with him. And then one night he texted me and said, I think I'm going to stay here. It's just easier. That was it. No call, no conversation. Just a text. I was humiliated, not just because he went back to her, but because he lied the whole way there, because he used the dog as a shield, because he made me feel like I was crazy for questioning what he swore was innocent. And the worst part, I still missed him, even after all that. Friends told me I dodged a bullet, that if he could sneak back into a marriage like it was nothing, he was never really with me in the first place. But that doesn't make the silence feel any less sharp. It doesn't make the nights I waited for a text that never came feel any less pathetic. I think about the dog sometimes, about how he was just this sweet aging animal caught between two people who couldn't let go. Maybe the dog really was the excuse, or maybe Matt used him as a convenient bridge to get back to something familiar, something he didn't have to work for. I'll never really know. What I do know is this: love doesn't look like disappearing into your past and calling it loyalty. It doesn't look like leaving someone hanging while you play house with your ex. And it definitely doesn't look like letting someone believe they're your future while you're busy rewinding your life behind their back. I wish I'd seen it sooner. I wish I hadn't accepted just the dog as an answer, because it was never just about the dog. I always thought drama was something other people dealt with. The screaming, the wild rumors, the backstabbing friend groups. It was never really my world. I kept to myself mostly, had a few close friends, worked a lot, didn't get involved in stuff that didn't concern me. So when I started dating Lily, I didn't expect chaos. She was soft-spoken, artsy, always scribbling in her little notebook or half listening to podcasts while painting her nails. She seemed like the quiet kind. But maybe that's the thing. Sometimes the quiet ones just hide their mess better. We met through a friend who was always trying to set people up. I didn't even want to go out that night, but she dragged me to some open mic thing downtown. And Lily was there sitting alone, drinking tea like she was the only person who didn't need to be entertained. We hit it off quick. We were both kind of over everything, not looking for anything serious, just trying to find someone who got it. Or at least that's what I thought we were doing. The first few months were easy. We spent a lot of time in my apartment, cooking random meals and watching shows we didn't really care about. She hated going out unless it was to a bookstore or a gallery, and I didn't mind. We had a good thing going. Comfortable. Quiet. And one night, she told me she was dealing with some stuff at school. One of her professors was getting too close, crossing lines. She said she didn't want to talk about it too much, but he made her uncomfortable and she felt trapped. I was furious for her. Offered to help, told her she should report it, even offered to go with her. She said no. Said it would only make things worse. She just needed support, not drama. So I gave her what she asked for. I didn't push. I just listened and stayed close. Looking back now, that should have been the first red flag. Not because I didn't believe her, but because she told me just enough to keep me invested without giving me anything real. A couple weeks later, things got weird. One of my friends, someone I'd known for years, asked me if everything was okay. I said, yeah, why? And she hesitated before telling me that Lily had said some things. Things like I had a temper, that I'd gotten physical during an argument, that she didn't feel safe around me sometimes. I laughed at first, literally laughed, because it was the most absurd thing I'd ever heard. I hadn't even raised my voice at her. I barely even got angry. I didn't know what to say except, that's not true. But it kept happening. People started treating me differently. Friends I'd known since college were suddenly cold, short, awkward around me. One of them pulled me aside and said, "Look, man, if you need help or something, there's no shame in talking to someone." And I was just standing there like, what are you talking about? It took me weeks to piece it together. And when I finally confronted her about it, she acted confused. Hurt even. Said she didn't know why people were saying those things. Maybe someone misunderstood something. Maybe people were twisting her words. She even cried. Said I was the only person she trusted, that she didn't want to lose me to. And for some stupid reason, I believed her. Because that's how it works, right? People like her don't lie in big, obvious ways. They lie like artists. Layer after layer, little things that add up to a version of reality that only they can control. By the time you figure it out, this already cost you everything. The final straw came out of nowhere. One night, I was out with a couple friends. Just guys from work, nothing big. I got a text from one of my old friends, someone I hadn't seen in a while. It just said, "Hey, I think you need to see this." Attached was a screenshot of a group chat I didn't even know existed. It was a bunch of Lily's friends, all talking about how she was finally getting away from him, how brave she was, how they always knew there was something off about me. I sat there staring at the screen for probably 5 minutes. I wasn't even angry at first. I was just numb. Like my brain couldn't process it. I hadn't done any of the things she said. None of it. But she'd built this whole alternate version of our relationship and shared it with everyone in her orbit. And they believed her, without question. I went home that night and packed her things into a box. No yelling, no fight. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that settles in when the illusion finally breaks. When she showed up the next day, she acted like I was the one being dramatic. Said I should talk to her before making assumptions. I didn't say much. I just gave her the box and walked away. A week later, I heard through a friend that she'd gone back to that same professor. The one she claimed made her uncomfortable. They'd been seeing each other secretly for months. While she was telling people I was unstable, she was sneaking around with someone twice her age and using me as the excuse. Like I was just a placeholder until she could rewrite the story in a way that made her choices look noble. It's been a year now. Most of the people who believed her never really came back around. A few did after they realized she had a pattern. But it doesn't change the fact that for a long time, people thought I was someone I wasn't. And no matter how many times you say it's not true, there's always a part of you that wonders if the damage can ever be undone. I still think about her sometimes. Not in a missing her kind of way, but in a how did I not see it kind of way. I wonder how many other people she's rewritten. How many other stories she's told with herself in the center as the hero or the victim, never the villain. Maybe none. Maybe I was just the unlucky one who caught her at the right time with the right excuse. But I've learned to live with it, to move on without needing to clear my name every time someone brings her up. Because in the end, people believe what they want to believe, and the ones who know you, the ones who actually know you, they don't need convincing. It started with an app, not even a dating app, just one of those budgeting ones where you can track loans and bills and who owes who what. I used it with friends when we split Airbnb costs or went in on concert tickets. Never with a partner before. But Tom insisted. Said it would keep things transparent. Said it was better to be organized when we were talking about big money. And we were, or at least I thought we were. We'd been dating almost 2 years when he pitched his startup idea. It was one of those vague tech concepts that sounds impressive when you say it fast, something about streamlining digital contracts for freelancers. He talked fast, threw around words like scalable and investor-ready and disruption. I didn't really get it, but I believed in him. He was sharp and ambitious, and I figured if he believed in it that much, maybe I should too. I wasn't rich. I had some savings, mostly from working overtime and skipping out on vacations. I've been saving for a down payment, trying to inch toward that grown-up feeling of stability. But he caught me at just the right time, when things felt like they were moving forward, when I wanted to be part of something bigger than just my routine. He didn't ask for a lot, just a short-term loan to get the business off the ground. He called it seed money. Said I'd be an early investor. Said I'd thank myself later. So I transferred him the money. It wasn't a ton compared to what some people throw around, but to me, it was everything. I didn't tell anyone at first, not my friends, not my sister. I didn't want to hear the questions or the doubts. I told myself it was a sign of trust. That's what you do when you believe in someone. You back them. He sent me updates, screenshots of designs, emails from supposed developers, voice notes talking about meetings he had lined up. He looked busy, focused. I even saw a logo once, clean, modern, with a little techie twist. He made me feel like I was part of something. Every time I had a doubt, he had an answer. He made me feel like the doubts were small-minded, like people who didn't understand the hustle would never get. Then one weekend he told me he was going to New York to pitch to a group of potential investors. Said it would be quick, 3 days max. Said he'd be back with good news. I dropped him at the airport, gave him a hug, wished him luck. He didn't check in much while he was gone, but I figured he was busy. That's what I told myself. 3 days turned into a week, then 10 days, then silence. I texted, called, sent emails, nothing. At first, I thought maybe his phone died, or maybe he was just caught up in meetings. But then his number stopped ringing entirely. It didn't go to voicemail, it just disconnected. His social media vanished. His email bounced back. His apartment was suddenly empty, like he never lived there at all. That's when it hit me. He was gone. I drove around for hours, checked coffee shops, called his friends, even went to his old office space, which, surprise, had never actually been rented in his name. He'd used it once for a photo shoot and made it seem like it was his. Everything I thought I knew was a layer of performance. Everything I believed was a script. I felt stupid. And worse than that, I felt erased. Like it didn't matter enough to even get a goodbye. It took me weeks to figure out where he went. I only found out because of a tagged photo on some random travel blog. That he was on a yacht in Greece, smiling like nothing had happened, arm around some new girl with bright red sunglasses and that effortless influencer look. The caption was something corny like, "Finding freedom." My stomach dropped. I zoomed in on the background. The yacht name. I Googled it, traced it back to a rental company. Traced that to a billing address. It didn't help me much, but it gave me one solid answer. He used my money, my savings, my future, to fund a vacation with someone else. Friends asked if I was going to report him. Some even said I should go public, make a post, warn people. But I didn't. I didn't want to make it worse. I didn't want my name tied to his mess. I just wanted to disappear from it. The hardest part wasn't the money. It was realizing he never loved me. Not really. He loved the convenience, the image, the comfort of having someone who'd back in without question. I was just a stepping stone, a boost on his way to whatever came next. And I'd given it freely, thinking it meant something. For a while, I couldn't bring myself to trust anyone. Every new conversation felt loaded, like I was waiting for the lie, waiting for the angle. I became the person who asked too many questions, who Googled your job title, who triple-checked your LinkedIn before believing anything you said. I hated being that way, but I didn't know how not to be. Eventually, I got the money back. Not from him. He was long gone, probably onto his next pitch, his next early investor. I took on freelance work, sold some stuff, cut every corner I could. It took a year, but I did it. Not because I wanted to forget, but because I refused to let him be the reason I stayed stuck. Sometimes I still think about that app, the one where it all started. How we used it to make everything seem fair, clean, honest, like we were partners, like we were building something real. But some people don't build. They just borrow, take, and move on. And some of us are left rebuilding from scratch, a little wiser, a little colder, but still standing. It's weird how someone can turn your life upside down with a smile. Not even a dramatic kind of smile, either. Just the kind that slips in during small talk, makes you think they're harmless. Chloe had that smile. She used it like a key, unlocking doors she had no business opening, stepping into parts of my life I didn't even realize were unguarded. By the time I saw it for what it was, I was already the bad guy in a story I didn't even write. We met in the most casual way. Friends of friends, some rooftop hangout, cheap drinks, and string lights. She was quiet at first, the kind of person who watched more than talked. But once you got her going, she was hilarious, dry, and sharp, and just weird enough to make everything feel less boring. We started seeing each other casually, no labels, no pressure. It was fun. Then it wasn't. It crept up slowly. She moved in unofficially, left a toothbrush, then a drawer, then most of her closet. I didn't mind. I liked having her around. She said she felt safest with me, and that sentence alone made me feel like I was doing something right. Looking back, I think that's the line that got me the most. She started talking about money. Not in any way, just little comments. Her last apartment screwed her over. She'd been helping out her mom. School loans were killing her. I offered to cover things sometimes. Groceries for half of the rent. Then she mentioned her laptop was dying, and I surprised her with a new one. She cried. Said no one had ever done something like that for her. I felt like a hero. That's how it kept going. She never asked directly, but I kept giving. Small things at first, then bigger. Jewelry she casually admired, weekend trips she said she'd never be able to afford. I didn't keep track because I didn't think I had to. It wasn't about the stuff. It was about her, about us. Until it wasn't. I noticed a shift when she started pulling away. No more random kisses while I made coffee. No more crashing on the couch watching dumb movies. She was always tired or busy or in her own head. I gave her space. I thought maybe she was going through something. She said she was fine. I didn't press. Then one day she just left. No fight. No explanation. Just gone. Took her stuff while I was at work. Left the keys on the table next to a note that said, I need to figure things out. No name, no signature. Just that. I texted. She replied with one word, sorry. That should have been the end. And maybe for most people it would have been. But then a week later, I got a knock at my door. 2 cops. One of them holding a printed out stack of screenshots. They said there'd been a complaint filed, accusations of harassment, of me showing up uninvited, texting excessively threatening behavior. I stood there blinking, trying to process it. I hadn't done any of that. I hadn't even seen her since she left. They told me she had messages. They showed me screenshots. Messages I didn't recognize from a number I didn't use. Stuff that looked bad, desperate, angry stuff. Some of them even had my name signed at the end like I was writing a letter. Who does that in text? But to them, it didn't matter. They said she filed a temporary restraining order. My stomach dropped. It was surreal. One minute I was living my normal life. The next I was being told to stay away from someone I hadn't even contacted. I tried to explain. Told them I hadn't done any of it. They said it wasn't up to them to decide what was true. The system would handle that. I called a lawyer. Cost me more than I'd like to admit. They said it looked like a setup. That it wasn't uncommon for people to fake messages, especially if they had something to gain. That sentence hit hard, because suddenly everything made sense. The gifts, the rent, the laptop, the ring she hinted at before she left. She didn't want to give anything back, and with a restraining order in place, she didn't have to. I checked the screenshots again. The texts weren't just fake. They were crafted. Phrases I'd never use, tone that didn't sound like me at all. But she knew I wouldn't fight it. She knew I'd be too shocked, too drained to go through the process of proving it. She was right. I didn't fight it. I just disappeared. People asked where she went. I said I didn't know. Some of them gave me side looks like maybe I'd done something. Others shrugged it off. No one really knew how deep it went. I never told them. I didn't want to look like I was trying to clear my name. But inside, I was wrecked. Not because of the stuff. Not even because of the fake messages. But because I really thought she loved me. I thought we had something real. And she used that belief as a tool. Or maybe a weapon. She rewrote the story and in her version, I was just a shadow she had to escape from. It's been a while now. I still don't know where she went. Sometimes I wonder if she's done it to someone else. If there's another guy out there trying to figure out how the girl who laughed at all his dumb jokes turned him into a villain in a story that never made sense. I've deleted the app, blocked her number, thrown away the notes she left behind, but I still can't throw out the trust she broke. That part stuck with me. Probably will be for a while, because it wasn't just about a breakup. It was about how easy it is for someone to twist the truth and make you question everything you thought was solid. I don't know what her end game was. Maybe there wasn't one. Maybe she just wanted out and found the easiest way to vanish without accountability. Or maybe she planned it from the start. I'll never know, and I've stopped trying to figure it out. All I know now is this: some people don't break up with you. They erase you, quietly, efficiently, and with just enough lies to make everyone else believe they were the one who survived you. You know that feeling when someone tells a story about you, and you don't even recognize the version of yourself in it. That's what happened when Eric went on TV, like actual national daytime television. I was home scrolling through clips on my lunch break and saw his face pop up. I almost dropped my phone. Not because he was on TV, I knew he liked attention, but because of the headline under his name: Survivor of Emotional Abuse, a Story of Healing. I thought it was a mistake. Maybe it wasn't him. But then he started talking, and it was his voice. His little nervous laugh, the one he used when he was making something on the spot. He said he'd been in a toxic relationship for 2 years, that his partner made him feel small, like he didn't matter, that he'd been isolated, controlled, manipulated. I was that partner. And I sat there on my couch, frozen, while the internet started calling me a monster. We were together for almost 3 years, and right after his first stint in rehab. He was shaky, vulnerable, but he had this soft charm about him, like he'd been through the ringer but still had hope. I liked that. I dated people who were all image, all ambition. Eric was real. Messy, but real. He didn't pretend to have it all figured out. He cried when he needed to. He was honest about what scared him. I thought we'd help each other grow. In the beginning, I was careful. I didn't want to be the person who pushed him too hard or made him feel like a project. I supported him without trying to fix him. I went with him to meetings, sat in the waiting room during therapy, even changed our fridge to suit his recovery diet. It wasn't always easy. There were relapses, big ones. Nights where he disappeared, mornings where I found him on the bathroom floor. But I never gave up on him. That was a problem, I think. I stayed too long. The cracks started small. He'd accuse me of checking out, say I wasn't as invested anymore, even though I was doing everything. Paying the bills, cleaning up after him, trying to hold down a job while making sure he didn't spiral. He'd cry and say I made him feel like a failure, but never mention the part where he hadn't applied to a job in over a year. I was carrying both of us, and he made me feel guilty for being tired. He didn't hit me, never raise a hand. But words can bruise too. The constant guilt trips, the silent treatment, the way he'd twist things until I was apologizing for stuff he'd done. I'd wake up wondering what kind of day it would be. Would he be the sweet, funny Eric who made breakfast and talked about our future? Or would it be the version that stared through me like I was the reason he couldn't breathe? I started withdrawing from people, not on purpose. I just didn't want to explain anymore. If I told the truth, they'd think he was a bad person. And I didn't want that. I loved him. At least I thought I did. It's hard to tell when love becomes obligation, when care becomes a cage. By the time I realized I wasn't okay, I didn't even know how to leave. He left first, said he needed space, said I was too much, that I made him feel like a child. Packed up his stuff and moved into a friend's spare room. I felt relief more than heartbreak. I thought maybe this was the beginning of something better for both of us. I even texted him a few days later, told him I hoped he was doing all right. He never responded. Then the video aired. People started tagging me in clips. Some of his old friends posted about how proud they were of him. I lost followers overnight. People I barely knew were messaging me, calling me cruel, manipulative, saying I was lucky he didn't press charges. At work, someone brought it up casually, like they were just curious. I had to excuse myself and sit in the bathroom for 10 minutes because I couldn't breathe. The thing is, he never said my name, but he didn't have to. The timeline lined up. The details were just vague enough to protect him legally, but specific enough that people close to us knew exactly who he meant. I tried to reach out. Not to fight, just to ask why. Why he would twist it like that. He blocked me on everything. For a while, I thought about posting my side. I even wrote something up. I had pictures, texts, receipts. Proof that I wasn't the villain he made me out to be. But I never posted it, because I knew how it would look. The person accused of abuse defending themselves. No one wants to hear that story. It just makes you look worse. Instead, I disappeared. Logged off social media, changed my number, Stopped going to the spots we used to hang out. I needed to feel invisible for a while. Needed to stop explaining myself. There's this pressure to be the bigger person when someone lies about you. To stay quiet, take the high road. But silence feels a lot like surrender. It's been over a year now. Every so often, I'll see his name pop up. He started a podcast about healing, does speaking gigs now. Talks about mental health, recovery, relationships. I wonder if he ever tells the full story. If he ever thinks about the part where I stayed through every low, every relapse, every breakdown. Or if he's written it all in his head. Maybe he believes it. That's the scariest part. Maybe he's told the story so many times, he doesn't even remember what actually happened. I still flinch when people ask about my past relationships. I still hesitate before getting close to anyone new. There's this fear now that even love can be used against you, that being good to someone can come back like a knife in the back. But I'm trying. Slowly, quietly, I'm rebuilding. Because the truth doesn't always win in the moment, but it doesn't disappear either. It sticks around, waiting for someone who's finally ready to listen. There's this weird thing people say when a relationship ends. At least now you know who they really are. But that's the part that messed me up the most, because I thought I did know. I thought I had this full, clear image of Matt, calm, collected, honest, grounded. That's how he came across anyway. Always had the right thing to say, always made people feel safe. He could make silence feel comfortable. That's probably why I didn't see it sooner. He was too smooth. We met through mutual friends, one of those game night situations that feel awkward at first but get better after a few beers. He was a little older than me, divorced, no kids, just a dog he shared with his ex. He was upfront about that from the start. Said they co-parented the dog, which I thought was kind of funny but also sweet. Most people don't even stay civil, let alone work out a custody arrangement for a dog. It made him seem emotionally mature. I saw it as a green flag. At first, everything was easy. We weren't rushing into anything, we took our time. Dinner once a week turned into weekends together. Then we started talking about living together, and that's when the dog came up again. He said he still visited the exit place once in a while to see the dog since she had the yard, and he didn't. I didn't think much of it. I trusted him. That trust turned into something like routine. Every Wednesday night, he'd go over there to walk the dog. Sometimes he stayed for dinner, said it was just easier than driving back and forth. I believed him. Not because I was clueless, but because there was never a reason not to. He showed up for me. He supported me through job stress, helped me move apartments, met my family. I had no reason to dig. But then little things started happening. He'd forget to mention plans until the last minute. He was vague about who was going to be somewhere when he hung out with certain friends. He started acting weird with his phone, nothing dramatic, just subtle. Less eye contact when he checked it, more time with it flipped over. I started getting this gut feeling, not full-on panic, just unease. The kind that hums quietly in the background. So one night while he was out, I looked him up. Not in a stalker way, just a little search to clear my head. And there it was, his ex's Instagram newly public, a picture of him, her, and the dog. On her couch, a caption that said, "Rebuilding the life we almost lost." I felt my stomach sink. I didn't react right away. I sat with it, scrolled back through the last few months of posts. More pictures of him than I could count. Some recent, some clearly taken on days he said he was with friends or working late. And in every single one, he looked comfortable, at home. Not like someone trying to co-parent a dog, like someone who lived there. I didn't say anything that night. I couldn't. I needed to be sure. So I waited until the next Wednesday. He left like usual, gave me a kiss, said he'd be back late. I followed him, not even trying to be sneaky about it, just far enough behind that he wouldn't notice. And he went straight to her place. I waited in the car for hours. I thought maybe he'd walk the dog and come back out. Maybe they'd talk for a bit, but the lights went out. He never came out. He slept there. When he came back the next day, he acted normal, like nothing happened. Made breakfast, asked if I wanted coffee. I couldn't even look at him. I told him I knew. Showed him the post. His face went blank. He didn't deny it. He didn't even seem surprised. He just said it was complicated. That you didn't know how to let me down gently. that he never stopped loving her, but he didn't want to hurt me either. I asked him how long it had been going on. He said, a while. That's when it hit me. The whole time we were building something together, apartment hunting, planning trips, talking about our future, he was already rebuilding a different life with someone else, with the person he swore was just an ex, the one he said he was done with for good. I kicked him out that day, told him to take his stuff and leave the keys. He didn't argue. Just packed up, said he was sorry, and walked out like it was nothing, like he hadn't just lit a match and walked away from everything we had. The worst part wasn't even the betrayal, it was how calm he was. How easy it seemed for him to just switch gears, to go from living with me to sliding back into a life he never actually left. For weeks, I felt like a backup plan. Like I was plan B while he waited to see if she'd take him back. And when she did, I became disposable. All those late night talks, the birthdays, the long drives, we weren't building anything. I was just holding space. People always say trust is earned, but I don't think that's true. I think most of us give it away freely and just hope we're not wrong about who we give it to. I trusted him because he seemed steady, because he said the right things and did just enough to keep me from asking the wrong questions. Now, when people talk about their exes with casual co-parenting stories, I flinch a little, because that's how it started for me. A dog, a few visits, then a full-blown second life playing out behind my back. I don't miss him. Not really. I miss who I thought he was. I miss the version of him that cared about me, that showed up, that made me feel like I mattered. But that version wasn't real. It was just another mask he wore until something better came along.